I'd like to introduce you to the title story of Candle Feather Wooden Spoon. Candle Feather Wooden Spoon. It is about the protagonist. Chase is a boy who has a grandfather who has been through World War II and the camps, and carries with him a lot of bitterness and anger and pain and hurt, physically, mentally, spiritually. And Chase resents this bitterness that is always oozing from his grandfather. Everything his grandfather eats, it could be whether it's hamantaschen or latkes or matzah, he always says, bitter, bitter, bitter. Everything was sweeter in the old country. And finally with matzah, Chase just can't take it anymore. He's like, even matzah was sweeter in the old country? That's not possible. It's not sweet. And he's just so angry about his grandfather's bitterness. And then they have their dog, whose name is the Professor, sends Chase on a journey, a quest to help save his grandfather from his consuming bitterness. So I'm going to read a little bit of an excerpt from Candle Feather Wooden Spoon, the title story, and then the questions at the end. "You're talking," Chase said to the dog incredulously. Then he looked toward the moon, remembering learning that the vocabulary word lunatic means someone who is made crazy by the moon. "You are not a lunatic," said the Professor, "and you're also not horseradish," he added with a wink. "I don't understand," Chase said. "You've never spoken before." "Kol haneshama tehalel yah," the dog said. "I don't speak Yiddish," Chase said. "That wasn't Yiddish. That was Hebrew," explained the Professor, scratching himself behind his ear with his back paw. "It means every breath shall praise God. It's from Psalm 150. "Oh," said Chase, not knowing what to say. "Every living thing that breathes can also speak and praise. We just don't understand each other. Ever since the big mishigas with the Tower of Babel, we don't understand very many languages. You don't speak squirrel or spider crab or woodpecker, do you?" "But how come I understand you now?" "Because I have a message for you," the dog said, as if it were just a matter of fact. Chase hugged his comforter around his shoulders. "From whom?" he asked. "Ah," said the dog, "some mysteries simply cannot be named." "Listen to me carefully," the Professor suddenly said in an urgent whisper. "There is a fruit that grows in only one garden and on only one tree. It is sweet and full of memory and the nectar of peace. If you find this fruit for your grandfather, he will be cured of his bitterness." "But how?" asked Chase. "It's a perilous journey. You will have to gather 3 things and carry them in a magic satchel. And you must beware of the plague of darkness. It brings a darkness so thick that one person can no longer see the other person standing in front of them. And when you can't see the person standing in front of you, and you know they can't see you, your heart hardens and you do terrible things. The plague of darkness will swallow your goodness like a snake swallows a rodent." Chase shivered and pulled his blankets up over his mouth and nose so that only his eyes peeked out. But what do I have to do?" "Ah," said the Professor. "Wait here." The dog trotted out of the room. A moment later, the dog returned with a faintly glowing satchel in his mouth. The dog laid it in front of Chase. Chase picked it up. It was soft as velvet and it glistened like a starlit puddle. The Professor looked toward the window. The moonlight glowed around his face like a silver lining around a storm cloud. The Professor said in a faraway voice, "Candle Feather Wooden Spoon, Passover will be coming soon. Candle Feather Wooden Spoon, follow the light of the silvery moon." I'm excited for you to read this story. I'll actually share that this story was inspired by a story that I would read to my children over and over again, and they loved it so much, and it was called My Father's Dragon. And if you know that story, it's also a quest, and really, really was inspiring to me in writing this story. One of the questions is, what do younger and older generations have to gain by talking with one another? And what stands in their way? Number 2, what might the plague of darkness in the story represent? Chase's grandfather cannot experience the joy and sweetness around him because of the trauma he carries inside. What is it about this particular Hillel sandwich that opens his eyes? What can we do to help survivors of trauma? Imagine you are using a candle feather and a wooden spoon, but instead of searching a home for chametz, you are searching your mind for clutter you'd like to clear. What are you finding there? I look forward to sharing this story with you, to hearing your thoughts, and talking with you and your community about this and the 21 other stories in Candle Feather Wooden Spoon. Thank you so much.